AI has a huge potential, right? And many companies can create new business opportunities through AI.
It's no longer the situation in AI world, in IT world, that it's not possible to be built. Everything is possible. It's a question only about the time and the matter.
If you make the tool actually useful for the people, they will come along and they will adopt it, right?
Delivering AI or running AI projects in corporates is a completely different story than in a startup.
Hi, my name is Marcin Kokot and welcome in Product Odyssey, the series where we explore how to build products fundamentally better. Joining us today is Oskar, the tech lead at M-Square Haikun, a leading company specializing in building comprehensive data-driven solutions for mid-size and large enterprises among different industries, including big players such as the largest airline in Germany. Oskar brings a wealth of experience in data science and brings AI solutions to the market from years of work in startups as a data science lead, founder, AI consultant, and a CTO roles. His work has consistently helped companies turn complex challenges into actionable long-term successes. Oskar, it's a pleasure to have you on board.
Thank you for having me here.
And today we also have Maciej, CTO at Vasco, where we have been building and consulting innovative solutions for fast-growing companies for over 10 years. Hi, Maciej.
Hello.
It's a pleasure to have you both here. And I would like to start already from the top on the very interesting experience that you have, Oskar. You are actually having a bio which is going through from actually being in a startups and going into the corporate world, but still touching data science and AI. And I would like to first ask you a question. What are your most noticeable differences when you see the startup environment and the corporate?
Good question. So in general, when you are in the startup environment, then you can build very quickly solutions. You can get to a POC. Usually you say in 3 days. Then you iteratively move it very quickly to a version where you get an MVP and roll out to the users. So this is usually only possible because you're starting from a green field. So you don't have any big stakeholder management. You don't have to take care of legacy systems. And eventually you can just start from scratch. The biggest limitation that you have is you have financial resources that you are limited in. And you also have typically the human resources. And additionally, you have also the problem that you have to balance between fire ceasing, short-term goals and long-term goals, right? So that makes it, in this case, a little bit hard, and you need to come fast out with a solution and seek feedback. This is very handy, actually, because you can get feedback, you can iteratively improve it. So that makes it actually very handy, actually, to work in a startup because you can get very quickly, right? One of the limitations, I said, is the lack of data. But nowadays, thanks to new solutions out there, like from NVIDIA synthesizer and from other companies which are producing LLM-based synthesizer, you can get to data more efficiently.
Right, that's a startup area, right?
Exactly.
And then what are the main things that you see as the blockers when you go into the corporate world with AI solutions?
Yes, on the other hand, corporate is a different topic. So you have a legacy system, which is very huge, and you need to cover with the new solution the full use case before you can roll out a new MVP that is facing the users, right? So additionally, you have also the problem of stakeholder management, and you need to make sure that you really get the data across different departments. Normally it's not like you have one single person that is responsible for the whole process, but it's divided into different departments, and the knowledge is fragmented, and so the data. So, and it's an art actually to collect all the knowledge from the different, let's say, stakeholders or from the different departments and make sure that it's consistent, right?
Right. Even though it's not the not the situation that doesn't exist this kind of issues in startup, but still, it's the way worse in a situation that you go into the big world, right?
Definitely.
I think it's much easier in startup world to actually assign some kind of champion for the effort, for any kind of AI effort that you want to introduce, right? So someone who will have this ownership over the process, can make things happen. There is no red tape or anything that could be found in larger enterprises, and without it, you can move much quicker, right? You can achieve your goal much quicker. You can make more bolder goals and try to aim for them. But yeah, there is this financial restrictions that makes you more creative, because you need to like maybe cut corners, maybe find some other solutions to achieve your goal regarding AI. And also as a startup, you're usually like less risk aware. So you can basically aim for more ambitious goal, because you have less to lose if you're an established enterprise. If you have a public-facing AI product, and if this goes wrong, like we also have seen a few times in the past months, then this can have like a big backlash, right? In case of startup, you also should prevent this kind of backlash, but you can risk more, and as a result, evolve much quicker.
Right. I wanted to check also not the risk factors, but this kind of perception that we've seen in many of the discussions with our clients and on the market, that people tend to talk, when we are saying AI, they tend to talk about AGI, so human-like super solution that you want to implement. Do you see this kind of misconception also when you are talking to the big corp?
It's a good point. So yeah, definitely we see this. We like always to talk about different types of AI, like the weak AI and the strong AI.
Mm-hmm.
The strong AI is the AI basically that is conscious and can make consciously decisions. And the weak AI is everything else, right? So what we see in the news, like, or in the Hollywood, like the Terminator that is making, like, running around and making decisions to kill anyone, is not what we see normally in real life, right? So in real life, we see like the weak AI, which is not conscious. These are solutions specifically made for particular problems. And in this scenario, we also distinguish different levels based on how it's integrated and what is the impact, right? So
and you see it like a binary thing, so like a weak or strong, or this is more like a spectrum, and the AI solutions could be somewhere along the lines between the fully autonomous AGI and like some simple mathematical models.
Yeah. So we see it actually that it's more black and white in this sense, because it's about the conscious, that you are not just hard coding something, or let's say not solving a particular problem using machine learning or any other method. But it's really like that the system is learning on its own, gathering information and making decision, and it's very general. So AGI would be the definition of a strong AI that is able to consciously understand the world and act on top of it.
Right. So this is like everybody is talking about AGI because that's making the news line, right? But in most of the cases, you don't need such a solution to be implemented to make an impact on your business and have the results. Therefore, it's an unfortunate name that we are calling it weak AI. But you need basically a solution, so a single, sometimes agent or the orchestration of agent that can actually provide you a solution, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you have any, if you can actually jump into already like your experience in real life cases, do you have any kind of in your head example of the project that would actually focus on the big corp and AI implementation where you've seen those kind of challenges and how you have overcome them?
Sure. So, I mean, I can tell plenty of stories, like from the startup and also from the corporate world. Like, particular to this question, I can maybe explain one example, describe one scenario. So, at M Square Hyken, we were helping a customer with understanding the feasibility of demand forecasting. Right, so here it was one of the largest wholesaler. So one of the largest wholesaler for pharmaceutical products. You can think of wholesaler, they have vast amounts of data, right? So and since they get like all the products from the producers, they can collect all this data. So it's a very good use case actually for wholesaler to think about demand forecasting and how to leverage actually AI in order to to improve their processes and also to save costs and so on. And this wholesaler was considering integrating demand forecast solution. So what was the situation? So they, as you can think of, like when you have pharmaceutical products, they can be, the price vary. There are like medicine that is very expensive, for instance, for cancer, that can cost, a pill can cost about 20,000. And they have expiration date, right? So, and you have to make a decision how much you want to keep in stock. So, and here was the question, okay, how can we save money? Because at the end, if you order too many and they expire and are not sold out, then you will lose, right? And it will affect your profit. You will basically lose potential money. And so what we did was basically we were like evaluating, assessing what is the maturity of the company, because this is super important to see how is the status quo and understanding, okay, how can we go to define a solution for the customer. And while doing so, it turns out that this is very common. Companies, corporates, they use ERP systems, right? Like SAP and so on. And one of the problems of those systems is that they are not made for big data. They have very valid use cases. They are usually very revision proof, but with these huge systems, which are not made up for big data, there's a huge challenge, right? So you can think of when you want to build a system, machine learning solution, let's say, on top of the system, that means you take all the data, you shift it out of this to a cloud, you do some calculation, and then the intermediate results has to come back, and then you take the data again, move everything back. So you can think of that it's really cumbersome.
Right.
This is what happens actually with this customer, right? So when we were building the POC and assessing the systems, the landscape, it turns out that in order to get the sample, to start actually to do the exploration, it took 30 minutes. So, and you can think of that this is not going to work if you need like really to work on a huge data set. It will be very inefficient. So when we recalculated the whole the business case, it turns out in order to get the infrastructure set up, the maturity of company leveled up so that he can actually leverage the solution, it would have produced so much cost that it would not pay out. It would not amortize actually for quite a while.
That's really interesting insight.
Yes.
You're saying that basically you've realized that the benefit of the project will not cause the return on investment you would expect.
Exactly.
You verified from the beginning. And that's interesting because in the startup area, you would actually assume that we can fix it later, right? The solution is the most important, and then we'll figure it out, optimize the cost and so on. Here you need to be cautious about the cost itself, right? Did it then end it, or do you decide that it's not worth of pursuing, or you have found out any kind of solutions for that?
I mean, we found a solution like that helped them at least like an intermediate solution so that they can work with it. But of course, the full-fledged, let's say, AI solution that they were hoping for was not possible, of course, or wouldn't pay out for them, right? So, and I think this is what is also important, that you need to be honest about. Or let's put it like that. So AI has a huge potential, right? And many companies can create new business opportunities through AI. They can make processes way like efficient in a way that they're really increasing their profit to large factors. But you have to be honest about that there are risks associated with that. And you need to be aware of that and make sure that you understand actually what are the different risks and that you mitigate them, right?
Right. It's also about the pointing out the risk, but I guess it's one thing that I see common in our approach also that we've taken in the recent also cases with our clients, is that the fact that you need to state the goal, which is maybe obvious, but you need to state the business goals of the project itself and control it through the KPIs, because it's no longer the situation in AI world, in IT world, that it's not possible to be built. Everything is possible. It's a question only about the time and the matter. So the question remains, is it worth of pursuing? And it's worth of pursuing in a given time that we have on the business, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So everything goes around like return on investment. And I think like many companies right now are calculating their past investments in AI. And there is some kind of disillusion that once they actually calculate the cost, the return on investment is just not there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a type of startup that you want to disrupt, you're willing to risk or fail if your approach will not succeed, then this is fine. But for many startups, AI is only part of the product. It's not the main goal. It's just to enhance some other parts of the product. And in this case, it's very important to also use some of the practices from the enterprises to actually calculate and should be more aware of what AI actually can provide to you and have everything in check regarding the cost and the progress. So yeah, everything needs to start from the business goal.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, in corporates, it's also like they are very risk averse because of the investment that goes in, right? So when you think of the complexity that it has to build an AI system and to really be successful with that in a corporate, it's about really planning a lot and making sure that if you invest so much, that it goes the right direction, right? And it's also like when you have already a pool of customers, let's say, and you are faced in the market and you have like a reputation, you don't want to put it at risk. So by just launching quickly something without being bulletproof, let's say, right, or safe enough.
Exactly.
There is actually one more thing which is worth of mentioning, and this is we've mentioned that it's a cost, but the concept that you have mentioned is a little bit different than what is almost always understood about the cost of AI. It's not only about running cost of credit for the AI and model that we'll actually use, but also you've mentioned the cost of building it, taking data, actually cleaning it and getting to the ERP systems, which is another cost which you need to calculate for the whole solution. In my opinion, it's going back into the split that we have done and the misperception around the strong and weak AI. Because if I'm going for thinking about AGI-like solution and just deploying the model, the misconception is I will just throw it there, it will live there, I will just deploy it, and it's up, right? And I'm never thinking about, or I'm worried that I'm not thinking about how to connect it, how to maintain that, how to optimize it in the future, right? That's the story probably which is in both areas, right? In the corporate, but also in the startup.
Definitely. There's a lot of like a huge topic actually, how to make sure that it's the system is working, that up and running, like not only on the DevOps side, but also on the model side, right? That you have enough transparency and observability about the system. And in particular, when you have system like HelloFresh, for instance, where they have like multiple, like hundreds of models for demand forecasting or something like that, and you have to manage and orchestrate all of them, it gets like very tricky, right?
Yeah, and there is the concept of MLOps, right? So basically using the DevOps paradigms and DevOps practices to introduce it into the AI world to ensure that you can also like quickly develop AI models, quickly update them, and deploy them easily, right? Because
exactly,
as the same as in classical development world, you don't want to waste time of your developers on the fact that the deployment phase is too overly complicated. The same is also true for the AI model development, right?
Exactly. It's interesting actually, because there is a, let's say, misconception. What the people think always, that when you have a corporate, that everything is put in place and you can expect the highest, you can expect like the highest AI maturity and data maturity. But I think it should be clear that it really depends on the sectors, on the product. It depends on the company itself, how far they are with their maturity. So and in general, so we can distinguish like these two parts. Let's say the digitalized, like digital native, and the other ones, right? When we are talking about Amazon, Google, Spotify, or Zalando in Germany, they are digital native, right? So they know, they have an understanding, okay, they build the system, they build the teams, typically cross-functional teams, in order to develop their AI solutions. And as opposed to that, we have like these big corporates which are like building physical products, right? Which were not digitalized from the day one, but which had to now, or which have now to develop those. And here the maturity is completely different one, right? So we see companies which are still on premise, and you need first to get from the premise to the cloud. Some of them have managed now to get to the cloud, and other ones built already, and these are like the top ones, they built already their data warehouses and hired the first data scientists. And we see there's a trend now, of course, with the recent developments in AI with LLMs and all the changes there and the opportunities, that many companies, they want to jump in. They want really to benefit, to leverage actually AI for their own company, because you can make really as I said, like demand forecasting, dynamic pricing, and there are other use cases which are very great opportunities for them to jump in.
Yeah, I think there is like a fear of missing out, right? For the brick and mortar companies, that actually
Exactly.
other companies are doing this and they are not. So the boards are actually...
Yeah, I would actually argue here, because this is a very interesting split that we have done, right? The mentioning that there is the digital companies which have easier life in implementing because they are ready from the perspective of data infrastructure. And then the manufacturing companies or the physical goods companies, they have a hard time because they need to deal with the data, go to the cloud in some cases for the first time, and then only after that enabling. But there is also a second side of the coin here, because, and we have seen that in our clients also when we were talking recently even, that there is the benefit of physical company or physical production line. You can very clearly see organized flow that you can then put goals on that and figure it out how to apply the AI systems or even one single agent to fix or enable one of the processes. So that gives you something more than you would have in case of digital companies, visibility and something like a measurable process. I'm not saying it's a deal breaker, but we've seen it's actually making it easier even from the perspective of the business case, right?
So you mean basically that it's easier to have business use cases for those manufacturing companies as opposed to the digital ones, right?
Right.
Okay. It's hard to say actually right now. I think that definitely there is a great opportunities for those manufacturers, right? Because they're starting from scratch. And the digital one, they have solutions already put in place. And so, yeah, maybe we can say that, but I think I would need a little bit more time to reflect on this. And
yeah, fair to say.
Yeah.
Do you see any other bigger differences in those kind of split that we have done among those that we have covered right now?
When having this business case for the manufacturer, it's also very important to have a good AI architecture around, right? So ensure that the stakeholders are being aware what they are actually looking at to manage their expectations, and also to ensure that the actual good UX around the UI, so that they can actually make this data that AI produces in a meaningful way, right? So this is something that also like startups have more like in a natural way. They're doing this by default, and this is much harder to introduce in the more like classical manufacturer kind of world.
That actually brings me to this question, because I can expect that in a startup, this could be a difference, right? In a startup area, you often are dealing with building a solution from the scratch and deploying that, and this is the first solution that users will see. In a corporate, you need to extend the given system or build and introduce the new system. Do you see any challenges or insights coming from that kind of challenge?
I mean, as I mentioned before, like we always have the problem that we have this legacy system and we have to make it cover the whole use case, right? So I think another factor actually, which is important to mention here when it's about like bringing AI to production and making sure that you get the return of investment is about actually the change management process, right? So whenever you implement solutions that impact the way how we work, the way how they change the process, you need to consider this. It's super important. So our CEO, Michael, he always say like an average 50% of the return of investment that is calculated, that is forecasted, is not achieved by companies. Why? Because they are not considering the change process.
Good. Yeah.
So it's super important. Like imagine this case. So we are working very frequently on dynamic pricing problems and projects for customers in order to make the prices more like optimized, of course, right? To increase the profit, the margin, but also in order to make sure that it's more consistent. Because if you have different human beings that make the price differently, it's very inconsistent, and you want to have some sort of a standardized way or more consistent approach, deterministic.
Right.
And when it comes to this project, it's very often actually that these prices are done by humans, right? By employees. And imagine that. Very simple case. It is very often you build a system that calculates optimal prices that would actually give you a great return of investment, but the sales manager are not convinced of the system for any reason, and they don't use it. So here it's where basically explainability becomes very crucial, right? We see explainability also in startups, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I have been working in medical field, like in health tech. It's also important that you also follow some regulations. In other highly regulated fields, you find it. But in corporates, explainability is super important when it comes to change management. And the more disruptive the solution is, the more top-down it has to be also the process. And the more change management has to be done.
Just to summarize here, to not lose those kind of insights, because you mentioned at least three good points here. One is that we reiterated that the change management is critical, right? This 50% of the lost revenue. I would argue that it would be probably more, but based on the experience. But this is where we are. This is really important. The explainability. That's where I would like to jump right now. And then you've mentioned the importance of the top-down planning of the implementation for a success. The explainability only. Can we dive deeper? Because in my understanding, always explainability, I was touching from the perspective of when I don't trust the system because we are building AI systems which are complex. I don't know where the data is coming from. Explainability is critical so I can trust that I know where is it coming. But in your perspective, you have probably touched also the area where it needs to be easy to understood or visual even, so that the users can trust more and start to use it, right?
Definitely. So it's about really understanding the models, why it makes decision, is it plausible, right? But also this plausibility gives you a trust that the outcome is correct. So, and there are different use cases, let's say, for explainability when it comes to having the trust, like as I said, like in the medical field, and in corporates, which are maybe not highly regulated. It's more about really the change process where it really comes into play. And so it's super important to consider this part.
But you've mentioned you have the challenges there that in the end, when you have developed the system, it was not used from the beginning by the users, right? How you have challenged that?
Sorry?
How you have overcome that?
I mean, we are always like, when we do our consulting, so actually, it's not like we did have the problem, but we see it actually for other corporates, that this is the failure, right? Mm-hmm. We always actually recommend to our customers to make sure that they keep this in mind, right? Because it, as I said, like, if you want to be disruptive, it's important that it's coming from the management, like that it's the top-down approach. Just simply speaking, because imagine that you want to, if you're talking to a department lead and he knows actually that maybe his job will be affected by that, he might not collaborate. So that's why it's super important that it's a top-down approach. And we always recommend to the customer, then to the client, that the proper change process has to happen, and we support them with this.
Right. This is something that we also seen in the startup area that's maybe on the smaller scale, right? But you need to deal with this kind of fear. And this is existing right now, that I will have the system which is doing some magic and then I have the answers. And if I don't understand where is it coming from, I have just the suggestion, for example, for a price. I need to know that I can trust it. I need to know that this is accurate, or if not, I will just take it as a consideration, right? So it's critical also to show and get the trust. It's through change management, through top-down probably, but also through maybe the design of the solution itself, that it's self-explanatory or it's more explainable, right, in a way.
Yeah, there is more than one way to build the trust, right? So if you make the tool actually useful for the people, they will come along and they will adopt it, right? So there is like this quote that AI will not replace people, right? But people with AI will replace people. So this is the same on every scale of company. So on enterprises, I believe this is also something much more common. But even in startups, if this is not like completely AI-focused startup, that from day one everyone is on board to use AI. If this is more like classical kind of startup, then this change management process also needs to be done with care, to ensure that people trust the system. In my opinion, the best approach here is to actually show them that this works, right? So do some kind of like lighthouse project to show that this could be useful for them, that this will not actually replace them, this will make them more efficient. And once everything is in place, they can maybe like focus on more creative tasks, and the more mundane work could be offloaded to some AI-based process, right? So this depends on the case. It could be, it's not always feasible to do it, and explainability is also very important in the matter that we can also modify the process as we go, and this also helps to build the trust. So if people can be the part of the change, also affect the process, the AI tools, the AI pipelines, ensure that on different steps of the pipeline the results are correct, then also this helps a lot to build the trust much quicker.
Yeah, and it's worth of underlining also that this is there is a misconception that the AI solution is always the only solution that exists there. I mean, like we apply this ChatGPT, which will answer all your questions, do the work for you, but the reality is that we are mostly living in and creating a biggest impact in the weak AI area, where the AI, this is our approach, and we have learned that this is solution needs to be a part of the AI. It would need to be a part of the whole solution, the whole functionality that you have, not the core itself, right? So sometimes, as you have mentioned the examples, right, either dynamic pricing or the cases that we have seen, the AI will be on the way. There will be one agent in the middle of the whole flow, business flow that you have that can help you. You will use another agent in another area. It's not that there is a one point that you rely always. And that can also help that it's actually almost invisible that it's in the process, right?
Yeah, like you cannot trust that AI will do all of the work for you, right? And there's like a magical black box that you show all of your issues over there, and you get the response that is good enough for you to use. Actually, there is a study conducted by Harvard Business School that was called, I believe, the jagged technological frontier. And it was a very interesting study because it covers that one of the big consultancy companies, actually, this is where the study was conducted. There was like a control group that do some kind of task, and other groups that actually was forced to use AI. And the task for them was chosen in a way that current AI at the current stage struggles with them. So AI was not good at those particular tasks. We're good at some of them, but not on all of them. Hence the name, the jagged frontier, right? And the result over there was very interesting, because the group that was forced to use the AI, their results were actually worse than the control group that were not using the AI. So some of the group. So forcing people to use blindly AI actually does not produce better results. They may conduct their job quicker, but the quality is worse. But there were two distinct groups within those using AI that actually were much more productive than the control group. And they use one of two practices, one of two techniques. And I believe that many viewers of our podcast are actually using those techniques already, because this is something not very groundbreaking. This is just a good practices of using AI, but not using them can actually cause more harm than actual good. So the first practice is being called centaur, so like a mythical half horse, half human. So this is like the basic usage of AI that gives you gains. So you either use AI only to prepare the data, to gather some information, and then work from there, like in a classical way, or you do your job normally and then use the AI only to refine the final output, like either like spell check or actually refine your work. And this is also very effective. But even more effective group was the ones that you are using the cyborg practices. So names comes from like a cyborg, so half human, half robot. And the cyborg practices name came from being a mix of human and a machine, right? And those were people that were intermingling the AI processes into their workflow. So they're using it partially. So they were using the output from AI to do some manual work on it, then passing it back to AI to refining it once again, basically like a short iterative loops. They were assigning different personas to the AI agents, so they can benefit more on different stages, on different contexts. They also use AI just to validate their work and not do everything for them, right? They can also use the refined techniques and others, but basically like using short cycles, iterative cycles with AI is much more productive than believing that everything can be solved by AI. Just ask it and you get a good response. This is just not true. You need to treat AI as a partner on your process, on your workflow, on many small stages. And this is also how we should build the actual AI processes workflows, right? So the same paradigm, the same practices also are more effective not only when interacting like human and AI, but also like interacting AI to AI, right? So having those specialized roles produce much better results than just like hoping that AI will solve all your issues. Until we get AGI over here, then this will basically this will not happen.
Yeah, any examples, Oscar, on actually, from your experience, examples of the projects where you actually solved this one kind of tiny issue but caused the bigger impact?
Many. So maybe I'd like to share one from a startup as well. I think this is a very nice one. Years ago, when I was working for a startup, so we had an exit after some years of developing products for them, AI-powered products. And investor of the company, like the investor that bought the company, had various other companies in the same domain. So I happened actually to lead their data science teams in different other ones. And in one of the data science teams, they were working on a particular problem. And it was like, in this company, they had a team of 4 people who would basically categorize documents from the state. There were like thousands of categories and old German kind of names, and you would try to understand from these documents, which were like in modern German language written, you would try to match actually those documents and find in a huge drop down, you would try to find then the suitable category. And this was a huge, you can think of very complicated, because nobody had really the overview of what all these categories means, and you have to read about this, time consuming, right?
I can expect it's a mess, yeah.
Yes. So, and what happened was actually they were like loading this drop down with the thousands of categories. It would take 10 seconds. And when I was tasked with this, it was about really making it faster, right? So we used in this case, like you can think of, originally this was string matching approach, and it's very inefficient. And later on, we optimize it. I'm happy to talk about this later more. But eventually what happened is that we not only replaced this syntactic model, let's call it, by a semantic model, but we automated actually the whole process. We automated it to that extent that the system was working more efficient than the human being. It was taking 10 milliseconds to load the drop down, and we reduce it actually to show you just the top 5 at the end. The top 5 which are suitable, and the top 1 would show you the category which matched actually. And with a very high accuracy. So it was an amazing, because this was actually an amazing success, not only because of the technical side, but and let's say the metrics, but also because the employees were super happy. You can imagine that it's not very convenient to work the whole day for like 4 days in a week, let's say, only on trying to figure out what is the category that matches this document, in particular if it is in bureaucracy, you know?
Yeah, and it's a great case of like a cyborg practice, right? So it's only enhance part of your workflow, right? And if you have enough this kind of small improvements, that can actually like gives a much better result. So like were there like any other improvements beside the dropdown that in the process? So
I mean, at the end, it was really on what happened behind the scene, right? I mean, on the backend side, right? Initially, there was the string matching approach that would just compare basically like the strings with each other. It would like take one particular string and try to match it and find out what is like what fits, and then it would show up everything. But what we did is we actually started to improve it iteratively, right? So in a startup, you know it yourself, like you don't try to come up with a solution, work on this 6 months, and then you deliver it, but you rather try really to come up with quick wins and make sure that things are like visible and that you can learn from it, right? So one of the big learnings, let's call it, which is meanwhile also established. But one of the big learnings I had back in time is really you need to fail fast, right? It's important that you understand when you're doing any action that you evaluate the results quickly and that you see, okay, what are the problems of the model? And then you can iterate on this. And also that you understand if something is not working so that you can take another path, right?
I think it's really important in case of the building of the trust, right? So if you can actually pull back the models that are actually not working correctly quick enough, then you're building the trust much quicker. I can imagine that after some time, since the first input on the dropdown was like almost always correct, so humans will I need to double check, right? But because it was like most of the time correct, then people start building the trust toward the tool, right? And basically after some time, I can imagine that this could be fully automated, because even human don't need to double check because it was like correct like enough number of times.
Yeah, it's a good point. So eventually, I mean, after that, at some point, I left the company, but to seek for other challenges. But definitely, this would be the next step actually to do. And I think in order to make this happen, it's very important that you really have put in place the proper monitoring system, the proper that you have proper observability, that you measure and so on, and act on this, right? So back in time, we delivered the solution, we were working on that, and at some point then I decided to move on to a different challenge. But yes, definitely this is the next step to automate this and make sure that you... So typically, by the way, as you know as well, like it's really to have like a solution that can cover automatically, but it understands when it's not able to deliver a good answer, and it then get like the human in the loop, right? This is the optimal solution, because a machine will never be 100% accurate. There always can happen failure for any reason, right? Like corruption in the data. It can be like that the model was badly trained on this particular type of examples and so on. So you can never expect that the system would work always great.
Yeah, and this can also happen for humans, right? Humans also make mistakes, but for some strange reason, we require 100% accuracy from AI, and we don't require the same accuracy from humans.
Exactly.
Yeah, it actually brings all those topics together, right? The cyber consent practices, the thinking about also, that's actually interesting when you've mentioned the small, we are calling it small work that you have done there, but it's actually solving a problem altogether and creating a big impact. And it's not like a huge model that you have deployed. It's not like the latest and brightest technology. It was the right tool for the right problem, even like a small agent, not the full model, that is doing one small job really, really good. And not doing it fully, but actually helping and extending the human capabilities there so they can actually spend the time on the most important task of their job, right?
Exactly. It was also a great journey. So maybe to give some insights here. So the project took several months. Normally, nowadays you can get those things quite quickly actually done, because thanks to LLMs and the recent advances, those things can be quickly automated and you can get a lot of things very fast. Like I think like in a fraction of the time. So but back in time actually we started like in a startup, and like it's best practice actually. We started with a baseline model, and then you try to iteratively improve it and increase the complexity, right? It has the reasons is like, of course, you want to have explainability. So typically when you start to develop a model, you want to get the simplest model possible that solves the problem, right? And simplicity also translates usually to explainability and interpretability of the model. That means you really understand what is going on in the model, right? And this is actually what we happen to do, right? So we started with a very simple logistic regression model with some feature extraction, normally this back of words approach or like some weighting approach. And then you really get into increasing the complexity as it needs to, right? So we saw actually it wasn't sufficient and so on, and we increased the complexity of the model. And after a certain period of time, we ended up with a BERT at the end. Like back in time, it was like state of the art. So we use BERT as a generative AI encoder model in order to get our embeddings in a way that it really gets way better. And sad story is after so hard work actually to try all the different approaches, it was just like a big model that you shoot into, and then it works out like kind of almost magically. You had to do some fine tuning and some optimization on top of it, but it worked really well after really fine tuning it to our custom data, right?
And the advancements in the area are really, really impressive, right? So the things that some time ago took like months to develop, right now could be done in a matter of days somehow even, right?
Exactly.
So this is like really, really impressive stuff. But one thing that did not change is the actual like UX part of the AI, right? So I think big part of the success in case of this drop-down example is that the connection between UI and human was something very familiar to the people that were using the system, right? They were still using the same drop-down, something that we're used to. Just it was a completely, it was the same form, the same interface, but just more usable to them, right? And the AI is behind the scene, and I think this is a trend that will still be continued. So in case of all of those weak AI cases that you mentioned, the AI is somewhere there behind the scenes, and help big part of building the trust is to actually using things, using UI, using UX that is familiar to the people using it, right? So being too novel is actually maybe not always the good way to move forward.
This is something that we always recognize also as in IT as the adoption of the innovation, right? That we have a distribution of the innovators and early adopters, which we always believe that the whole society is like that when we are creating something cool and perfect. But we need to remember that here is even harder, this gap between those early adopters, which will use the ChatGPT and latest models, and those that will use the technology only if this is I cannot indistinguishable from the current system, right? So those kind of drop down, they probably didn't know that what kind of system and AI is behind it, and that it's AI there, but it helped them, right? And so it's a magical thing, and then they will use it.
Yeah, and we live in a bubble, right? So all of the people that work with AI on every day, we're some common to it that we can be much more effective with more advanced tools. But for many people, this is threatening. So it's really important to also take this into consideration when developing like consumer-facing products.
Yeah, it's actually this is actually interesting thing from the recent days that when we are developing CDO Compass on our side, the difference between the release where we have enabled the voice, that was something that we didn't expect that to actually have huge impact, because it's probably the same message and the same things happening behind. So you have the same text and the value, but changing that to conversation, real human conversation, that's tremendously, we didn't expect that it would change so much for our users, right? Because it's a small UX from this perspective change, but it totally changed the interaction. It hugely increased the adoption. And it's a smallest experiment, right, that we have done.
Yeah, so like the whole CTO Compass is basically like an exploratory project for us to check new approaches, and then we can apply them on actual project. Well, this is also an actual project, but also very useful. But I think like this is the important part here, that like multimodality is the next big step, something that I already like stated a few times in previous episodes, and adding, for example, voice communication is the next. People nowadays associate like AI with chatbots, like with text bots, right? And this is something that will probably stay for some time still, but new modalities will come over, and this doesn't always have to be like a text or a voice. It could be in a form of more natural interfaces that people are used to, maybe even sometimes generated dynamically for the case they're trying to to solve. But I think the important part here is that all of the tools, they cannot be like thin wrappers over a publicly available API, right? So if you would like release our CTO Compass just as a thin wrapper over like GPT, then what value it actually brings? It's just a different interface. Someone could go to ChatGPT and ask the same questions, right? So we try to get something more meaningful out of it, right? So if you try it out, you will see that the flow of the conversation, the interaction, the user experience of using this product is completely different than a typical chatbot, and this is where we really put lots of our effort, like nowadays, lots of our R&D in the area to make sure that the conversation is more than just chat or more than just voice. It's like a mix of multimodality, like sometimes even like an omni-channel, so you can pick up the conversation in a different time, in a different medium, also sometime later. But basically making sure that this is very useful for you as a final user, and fine-tuning it, not only fine-tuning the model, but also like fine-tuning the experience.
The experience itself.
This is where the biggest value is, right? This is the last mile, and many products forget about it. That it's not just about having an AI feature, right? You need to fine-tune the user experience of the AI tool to ensure that this actually gives, and this also builds the trust, builds the confidence in the tool, but also actually can provide the most value to the user that you're trying to provide the value to.
It's totally true. Yes, there's also an experience that we did in the past, like with all the startups and all the customer-facing products, where you really would design the front end that is really important, that the interface is there and also the workflow. Otherwise, you will lose the users. And this holds in particular when you are really like facing users which are paying for that, right? Because in B2C in particular, where you really win over the customer because they are interested in using the product. And if this is not given, you will lose them, and you will lose basically your the potential profit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Guys,
and also like using different way of communication can also like affect the final result, right? So if you try CTO Compass right now, you can choose either to use voice or text. If you go through the process, you can basically check on your own behavior that it will change. So having to type things, you'll probably like double check if you type it correctly. You have all of those thoughts in the process. If you switch to the voice communication, you will see that you will communicate much more freely because you don't have time to double check everything. It's more like live experience. And because of this, also the output, the result is going to be different. It's much more natural. It's much more like an actual a good experience. And I think most of the products in the next like few quarters are going to strive to get this kind of experience that it's completely natural for the human to work with, and AI is only somewhere there and not very noticeable.
Amazing. Probably a segue to the more topics that we would explore right now, but unfortunately the episode is not big enough to handle the whole conversation. Definitely we are thinking about taking another recording and episode coming from that. But for now we'll need to almost wrap it up right now. So before doing that, as we always do, if you can actually summarize top 3 things that we have discussed here that you think are important that you'd like to sound. Do you want to start? So
for me, I think the takeaway I would like to be remembered is that you should always consider the change process, right? In order to make sure that your solution is not only well implemented, but also that it's well adopted at the end, right? Because only then you will have the opportunity to get the return of investment to the full extent that you estimated, right? Second one is that corporates delivering AI or running AI projects in corporates is a completely different story than a startup, right? You have a lot of regulations, a lot of limitations, and it slows down the project. But there's a huge opportunity there for companies, for corporates to have their AI solutions put in place, right? And I think that with the recent development there is a shift towards this direction, but it's important that you really have somebody that takes you in the hand and supports you in this journey to ensure that investment is actually safe, right?
Yeah.
So there's a huge bubble out there, and you need to make sure really that you are
That you approach it safely. Yeah, definitely. Good point.
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway is that at least until AGI is here, we cannot treat AI as a complete solution to solve all of us problems, right? So it's much more effective to actually treat it like a set of models, and we mix them into our existing workflows. So like using the cyborg practices, either like directly as a humans or making the same practices in our AI workflows is the most effective part to bring value from AI today. And also the UX of the experience with the AI is very important. Something that is sometimes, I believe, not putting enough focus on in today's products. So how we interact with AI, that the user experience is the most important part here. And user experience not only in like a UI kind of stuff, but also like the full complete experience of it. So this good UX helps to build trust to the tool, and as a result makes adoption much easier, and as a result makes your product much more successful. And this, I believe, is true for both and big enterprises with internal tooling, and also for publicly facing apps from small startups.
Amazing. I would probably mention multiple insights that we have already covered, and they would basically be aligned with your statements. From my side, just two things that I have really liked. Among the great examples of the stories that we have shared, Oscar, they are amazing, and I see that they are covered. The experience is actually covered also on our side in our clients' journeys, so it aligns. But two things that are really important that I see. One is the change mandate that you've mentioned. I connect that with our approach and our comments around the fact that you need to remember that in the end it is the user behind. It's not to apply the latest technology, latest model and deal with that. It's about solving the real problems of the users and actually care about that either through UX or experience multimodality. But the other thing is, and this was really a thing that we hear a lot also, and it's the fact that whenever you plan AI solution, it's a part of the bigger system, and it's a bigger solution, not the core of the solution itself, right? It's a feature. It could be one agent, it could be multiple agents, orchestrations. But remember, not one tool, AGI, for solving everything there. We are not yet there.
At least we don't have AGI, so
not yet.
It
maybe
may happen at some day. Yeah.
Definitely disclaimer, if by any chance before releasing this document and this podcast and AGI appears, sorry for saying that, but
yeah,
it's not
probably
yet
it makes the episode obsolete, yeah.
Correct. But thank you all. It was a pleasure to have a discussion, Oscar, and having it here. Hope that we'll have the second round with that. Definitely we need to do that or travel to Berlin. But thank you for being here. And thank you, Maciej, for a discussion. And thank you all for watching the episode. And remember to subscribe to get the latest information about the latest episodes. Remember, we are on Spotify, we are on YouTube. You can find us on media. And if you have any comments, feedback, don't forget to write to us and contact us. Thank you very much for this episode, and stay tuned. Take care.